Ladies and gentlemen, the next interesting part will be our first panel discussion. We will cover more on how to transform marketing departments from cost centers to value generators by implementing best practices of marketing strategies, tech adoption, and internal communication from outstanding fintech company, FE Credit, and Framers Agency Group M. On behalf of the joint force of MMA members, Mr. Rohit Jadwan, Managing Director, MMA Apex, is our moderator with our guests in panel, Mr. Kadilas Gu, CEO and Vice Chairman, FE Credit, and Mr. Neil Hardwick, CEO of Group M. And please welcome them.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the MMA Impact Vietnam Virtual Day 2. Our topic today is about advertising and how the modern era of marketing, the new rules are being established. The topic that we are discussing in specific is from cost center to value generator. How are we looking at marketing becoming a value generator in the new age of advertising and marketing? With the support of MarTech, with the support of technology, almost everything now is measured in this world. So how are marketers, how is the industry on the whole looking at marketing as a function? In the past, there was a common saying, 50% of advertising cannot be measured, or where does the 50% of the ad dollar goes? But that's no longer true. Every cent can be measured, especially with digital playing a very important role in that. And with MarTech and the advent of MarTech, that is going to become increasingly common even in the other spheres of advertising, whether it's out of home, whether it's billboards, cinema, etc., etc. So with me, I have a couple of very esteemed guests joining me today. We have Kalidas Ghosh, who's the CEO and Vice Chairman of FE Credit. Welcome to the show, Kali.
Thank you, Rohit. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here as always.
Thank you. Thank you for your support. And Neil Hardwick, who's the CEO of Group M Vietnam. Neil is in London doing this showcase with us. Welcome. It must be early morning for you.
It's not too early, and I'm still working roughly on Vietnam time, so I do start very early in the day. It's great to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much for joining. We always welcome your support, and it's a pleasure to have both of you on this panel. My objective of getting this panel organized was really to help answer some of these questions that have been nagging the industry for a while. And both of you are esteemed, learned professionals in this business. And I wanted to start off by stating some of the stats that we've done in our own survey. We've done a survey with MMA and WARC, which shows that 67% of marketing professionals say that brand awareness is just the key objective when marketing is being done via digital. Yet another Influencer Marketing Hub survey shows that 32% of all budgets that are spent on marketing in the digital world are being tracked. And therefore, it becomes very easy to go back and reflect on the priorities or the points that I made earlier as to how do you define marketing as a function? Is it still a cost center or a value generator? So to share some of those initial insights, would you, Kali, to start with you, would you please share with us whether these findings resonate with FE Credit and your company's marketing strategy, considering the last year and a half has been very challenging with the COVID-19 scenario and the dynamics of how consumers, governments, and companies are dealing with the pandemic. So what drives your organization to do so? If yes, if no, then why not?
No, absolutely. I think the changes in our marketing strategy has been apparent even before COVID. I think as the advent of digital came about, digital marketing and advertising came about, the whole focus on conversion, the whole focus on ROE being measured even more stringently, but at the same time, the marketing and sales budgets getting unified, and therefore the overall marketing budget increasing in absolute size as well as a percentage of our revenue was very apparent from, let's say, almost for 2.5 to 3 years now. COVID accelerated that in a manner that we couldn't have imagined. Like when the lockdown restrictions came about in Vietnam, irrespective of how the customer journey started, it all started ending up, that is the final stage of the onboarding, being a purely digital one. So in effect, 100% of our customers were getting onto a digital platform as a part of the onboarding process, which was unthinkable before, because we always felt if we had to impose, this will become a restriction and we will lose volumes. But this was, the necessity is the mother of invention. So the requirement arose and we responded to it. And when that happened, when 100% of your customers are on a digital platform, like a mobile app in a device held in their palm, the whole marketing aspect, the aspect of marketing undergoes a sea change. The opportunities for personalization, the opportunities for reaching out to a customer in a particular context, as opposed to in a generalized, noisy, lost in a noise kind of mode, suddenly became apparent for us. So now maybe over the course of the discussion, we can talk about some of the efforts we are undertaking to be more contextual, more personalized, present at the points of consumption, so omnipresent at points of consumption. And that obviously, when we see the benefit as management team, we are able to allocate more and more budget in a more measurable way to advertising and marketing, especially on the digital mode.
Okay, thank you for that. Neil, do you resonate with this from an agency perspective, from an industry perspective? Is this something that you're seeing across all your clients, whether more digital savvy like EpiCredit or more the new age brands like the e-commerce stores compared to the brick and mortar brands? How do you see this distinction being done?
Yeah, I mean, I think firstly, I separate out the concept of marketing versus advertising. We talk about marketing in the same sentence as advertising, but they're not the same thing. Many organizations are actually marketing led because they're, what they create is basically produced from marketing as a concept. That they're, the logic of creating products that consumers already want is marketing. But we're more specifically talking about advertising and measurement and how we reach customers. And your quote about 50, I know 50% of my money is wasted. I just don't know which 50%. But that's where we get on to what we've really just been talking about, which is COVID has been in a way a unique experiment. If anyone had suggested it, you'd have been shot down in most organizations. But if you'd said, I'll tell you what, let's take a region of the country and not let them, do any physical shopping, not let them, get out and about. Let's try and convert everybody to 100% digital. It would have been a really interesting experiment to do. Now, we didn't plan it, but we've worked through it and we've lived with it now in multiple geographies around the world. And what we're seeing is some really interesting outcomes because, we've created a world in which the physical interface with a brand has often disappeared and the digital interface has become vitally important. And some organizations were clearly better prepared in terms of not knowing that COVID was coming, but had already made a significant step towards a more fully integrated digital world than others. And if you take away the non-e-com element of your sales process, I actually think that it's shown how vitally important sort of advertising and connections to consumers are, because if you take away the unknowns of physical sales through brick and mortar and 100% focus your sales process through a digital platform or two, then you can start measuring really accurately who's buying what and from where. And I think it also has been really interesting to understand that balance between the own.com sites and brand.com sites versus e-commerce sites, and being able to track and measure that sales process has become a wonderful experiment that we've learned a huge amount from.
So I really like the way you said marketing and advertising is not the same, and marketing-led organizations are starting to deliver more results. And you also said it happened so that in the current dynamic, there were certain organizations which were more prepared for this digital change that has. Does that mean the brick and mortar companies which were traditionally not prepared have actually struggled? Or is it something that they need to relearn and re-engage with the audience in a different manner? Because they will never be able to compete with an e-commerce player otherwise.
No, and I don't think it's either or. I think that there are varying degrees, and I think that you know, I mean, just take a kind of bit of a silly example, but you know, I've been able to drink coffee the whole way through lockdown. Coffee's not been an issue, but boy, do I want to go and sit with a bunch of friends in a coffee shop and actually have a physical coffee in a physical location. So the ability to order online and have delivered is all well and good, but it doesn't, you know, it depends on the industry you're in, but certainly in many industries, the need to go and physically look at and play with, whether that's new technology in an Apple store, or whether that's, you know, going to sit in a coffee shop with your friends and actually have a coffee and talk with each other in person, it's continually integrated into the process. And you know, yes, some brands have had to really catch up on some of the parts that they were already missing. And I think it's quite clear. We know we have a range of clients, some of whom are sort of here in preparedness and some of whom were sort of further up in preparedness. And those that weren't as advanced have had to catch up pretty quickly because they've had one element of the sales process pulled away from them. And the other element has become all powerful for a period of time. But you know, you can catch up quite quickly. You can learn very quickly, but it needed to be done. The question now is, of course, once we start reopening, is you need to then readjust to a world where it isn't all online. So you know, we've sort of gone through a bit of a roller coaster. But certainly there were some brands and some organizations who were very much more advanced because they were already a long way down that digital sales process. Yeah, I could carry on for a while, but I won't keep talking too much.
Sounds good. And on that point, Kali, one of those companies is FE Credit, which was way advanced than the other financial segments of financial sector companies in the business, especially in Vietnam and other parts of Southeast Asia. And therefore, to what Neil said, it is not easy for others to catch up and catch up quickly. And so how do they actually end up doing that? And does that make it a level playing field? So that's one part of the question. But more obvious to that is, how does then profitability and competitive responsible growth for an advanced brand like yours, which is far ahead in the growth curve, stimulate consumer consumption for you guys? And if it does, what does that mean for the others?
Yeah, I think so. There are, I would probably split my response into three segments. The first of all is, look, I mean, I'd probably not be able to generalize it across industries, but for the finance industry, we are often a wraparound, right? We are basically more of an enabler in the process of e-commerce or in the process of transaction trade. For us, what was very important for us, and which we did even pre-COVID, that helped us during the COVID period, is to be able to be prepared for conducting or being embedded in the customer's journey in a seamless manner, so that finance is not seen as a interruptional process, but is more a part of the journey itself. And that required a significant change on our technology platform, creating a digital core in layers, which is able to interface with any form of customer interaction medium, whether it's a social media, e-commerce, or a simple mobile app, to be able to conduct processes on our side, which would enable us to offer our products and services to the customer seamlessly within the customer's journey on the e-commerce or ride hailing or any form of online business. And that's something which took us almost 2-3 years and a significant amount of investment. And many even internally would question, but now that we have reaped the benefits of it, I guess those doubts are put to rest. Then when COVID came and the transaction value or the transaction volume automatically started getting pumped up because of the circumstances, we were not only able to service the customers, we started gaining benefits of what we had invested, but we also found an opportunity in this increased volume to collect the data, understand customer psyche, understand customer behavior, and better tune our products. So that was an additional augmented opportunity that we got.
Sorry,
And
I do want to draw you back to the earlier part of the question is, how does marketing play a role in doing all this? And how did your marketing team actually enable all this conversation between all the segments of the business?
so at the back end, there were obviously work being done by the risk and the IT teams together to make sure, I mean, we are in the business of taking risks. So we got to make sure each and every decision of ours that we are going to take. And in this case, obviously, we won't have any human intervention. Somebody may decide to buy a mobile phone at midnight where we are not, physically present. So we got to make a completely digital platform that is able to take those decisions automatically. At the back end, there are involvement of technical experts, but in the front end, it's purely a marketing expertise in understanding consumer behavior and the counterpart, our partner's journey or customer's journey on our partner's platform. That is, I guess, the most important one. At what point, like, for example, if you look at the subtle difference between credit card and BNPL, it is BNPL which is actually advertised as a financing option upfront. For
the purpose of the audience, what is the full form?
BNPL is buy now, pay later. In 1990, when Citibank launched credit cards in India, they said buy now, pay later.
Okay.
And 30 years later, you see BNPL exploding on the world stage and billions of dollars of value being
Not
paid.
everybody is aware of it, nor was I. So I just wanted to clarify.
So it's basically credit-led purchase.
Okay.
Right? So,
sounds good.
But the difference between an earlier credit option to help you purchase at checkout counter in BNPL came up front when the merchandise is actually being displayed on your screen, when the financing offer is actually embedded in that display itself, where your choice and your purchase process is actually stimulated by a credit offer upfront, and not only when you have decided to buy and then you're checking out, pretty much like a dangler hanging from a motorbike's handle, steering handle in a physical shop. So you could see actually how that brick and mortar learning was actually getting transferred to an online process. And, so we had to be prepared with all those platform at the back end, but marketing orientation, consumer behavior, knowledge about consumer behavior in the front end, and also very deep interaction with our partners. Is it easy for all the players in the market to catch up? I guess volume plays a very key role here. If you are a big enough, if you have a significant market share, partners come to you, naturally they make compromises to partner with you. You have greater chances of experimentation. And when you have larger volumes of data, you're able to kind of take better predictive decisions to increase your volume. So, success breeds success, so volume breeds more volume in that sense. And that is not actually for everybody to catch up unless you start early and unless you have relevance in the marketplace. So I guess that would make a distinction in future.
It's always true. The first mover advantage is always something that has to be gained on, and if you leverage it well, there's always an opportunity to grow on it. So Neil, if that is the case, and going back to the earlier discussion we had, there were a lot of brands who were way ahead, and as you said, advanced stage of their digitization process. So given that marketing professional now use business metrics, ROI, incremental sales, LTV, and profit, etc., to measure the marketing effectiveness, and I'm not going back to advertising. During the pandemic, you must have seen a lot of your clients make millions of dollars investments in production capacity because they are using this opportunity to leverage and be ahead in the case. And as a result, spending a lot more on marketing to measure these, to gain these big revenue. What were some of those models that were put in place, if you can share with us, as their partner establishing some of these spends to measure their success?
I think the first thing I would say to answer that is that there is no one size fits all model. Every industry has a unique structure. If anybody starts talking about sort of a single model to allow people to deliver sales online, to measure marketing online, to structure your marketing online, that's just not applicable, because every single industry and every single sales process, and even as just discussed, the first mover has a different requirement to the newcomer. So there's not, the answer is you need to tailor your solutions to where you've got to, what your current challenges are, but also how your consumer behaviors are changing. And I just picked that up from Kali's point about, I wrote it down, how consumer behavior is changing, because during the pandemic, consumer behavior changed significantly from pre-pandemic. And I can tell you right now that in a week's time or 2 weeks' time, consumers' behavior will change again post-pandemic. And I know you have to be really careful. The pandemic isn't over, but that shortish period of extreme lockdown has, if that doesn't come back, consumers aren't going to go back to behaving as they did before, in terms of their travel patterns, in terms of the way they spend, in terms of the way they look at brands. And that creates a huge number of opportunities. But what it really does mean is that everyone needs to stop doing what they were doing during lockdown in terms of marketing and rethink again, because the world has moved on to another phase. So yes, people have done really well during lockdown, and some brands have achieved more than others, and some have been more successful. But the ones that have been successful really need to understand why they were successful, is because they adapted to lockdown. Post-lockdown, they're going to have to adapt to a world which is neither lockdown or neither pre-lockdown. It's a completely new world where consumers have learned new tricks and styles. They've been accessing new sites, and they've been exhibiting new behaviors in their purchasing patterns. Some of those new behaviors will stick. Some of those new behaviors will not stick. And for most brands, there will be a combination of some new behaviors and some existing behaviors reasserting themselves.
So how does marketing in days to come need to be changed in order to incorporate this value generation?
To continue to monitor what is driving sales and what isn't, what the consumer journey is changing to, because it changed during lockdown, it will change again. So you'll need to be able to look at, where's first click, what was the path to purchase, all the way through that consumer journey. I also think that there'll need to be a sort of a refocus on brand to an extent, because we've had a short period where, because it was, because online, the people were locked in, they changed their behaviors. We were recommending, and many of our brands we worked with and other brands that, in the market had spent significantly more on driving sales and revenue through direct processes and online purchasing. But that was at the expense of some of the brand communications. And that's going to have to shift back, because, we've been through a global shock to the system. If anyone believes that's the shock of the decade and there's no more coming, and that the rest of the decade is going to be smooth sailing, I beg to disagree. I think there will be other shocks. And one thing that is a truism that I don't think COVID has changed my perception of is that, at the end of the day, brands are brands, and those that stop investing in their brands for any length of time lose their brands. And good brands have come through COVID more strongly than weak brands. However, good brands that had a very good online process and an understanding and were able to cope with the changing consumer purchasing patterns have come through even stronger. So, it may be that over the, if things get back to a little bit more towards the normality, that people need to think about their brands and reasserting the brand values during a time of greater normality, because the next shock to the system, it's those strong brands that do well. Well, they only do well if you can still buy them online and you've got a good sales process. But what you really want is a strong brand and a really good sales process that is designed to cope with such shocks.
Sure. Well, thank you. That's interesting. And I think the customer journey is going to decipher a lot of this for us as we move forward. So Kali, leaving the COVID behind, next 3 to 5 years, as Neil rightly said, it is not done, but let's hope that it's done, or it will be done sooner than later. And let's go beyond COVID for a little time. How does marketing change in years to come, in the days to come? And what are some of the supporting initiatives that marketing will have, which will drive the consumer perception and more importantly, the value of marketing as a function inside an organization. There was 3 years back or 5 years back, I remember doing a panel discussion is what's the role of a CTO versus a CMO? And I think that question is getting answered very quickly as we get into this MarTech environment. Beyond that, what is the role of marketing? Is it truly a value generator? And if yes, how are we defining that? How will we define that?
Yeah, so the answer is a resounding yes about marketing being a value generator, and we already seeing it. In a post-COVID world, it does look like that we have to wait for, or we have to be very watchful of another set of changes. It's not a unidimensional, unipolar change, as Neil also mentioned, of customers continuing to behave in the same way that they behaved during the pandemic. When the physical stores open, when the physical world, so to say, opens up, people have opportunity to have a physical interaction when they choose to, but they have a completely digital experience of this pandemic period that has just gone by. How does the hybrid kind of preferences emerge over time is something that we have to watch probably in every industry, but definitely in ours, very, very carefully, because it would be difficult to force it upon the customer and and it will be to our detriment if we are not flowing with the tide with the customer behavior changes and being more useful, being more convenient to the customer. So to that extent, we have to keep that's the first principle that we have to keep and watch. And the second principle being that we have to adapt very, very quickly. And we might find that omni-channel experience itself will come much more relevant, because somebody may have actually studied, experienced, and even decided on a mobile phone, but actually wants to walk into the store next door to actually have a look and feel of the product that they are buying or the service they are trying to experience. So to that extent, it could become a bit complex as well. With regard to the role of marketing, I think the primary role is going to be understanding consumer behavior and modifying the business model to be embedded in the customer's life as part of their journey, as opposed to, especially for us, providing financial products and services which are best utilized when they're embedded in the lifestyle, in the life cycle of the customer, as opposed to being jerky, interventional, disruptive processes. And the role of the technology team versus the marketing is always going to be as differentiated as before. Technology being more tasked to deliver what marketing wants to be delivered to the customer. And to that, of course, the understanding on both sides have to be of a higher nature, of a deeper nature, to be successful together. But marketing's role is going to be A, to understand customer behavior, B, to embed a business model in the customer's journey, and C, in the process, generate value for the customer first and in turn for the company. So that itself shows you how marketing can become the leading force going forward in adapting the business model to the new reality, and which is obviously very, very essential for being sustainable, for being profitable, and for continuing to build a more durable brand for the future.
Okay, we have little time, only a couple of minutes, but I do want to get one question answered, and I think it's closer to driving the point that you are making, Kali, is the reality. The reality is the cost is going up. What pandemic has shown us, there's a cost of everything that you do, and the cost for everything that you're doing is going up. Whether it's acquisition of manpower, acquisition of technology, the value and preference shifts of everything that is happening. So Neil, from your perspective, when you look at one of the resources, which is the most important resource in the world of advertising, which is human manpower, how does that affect the equation between cost and value, and how does that change as we move forward? You are on mute, Neil.
First, a very cheap shot, which is if your costs are going up, you've got the wrong agency working for you. But leaving that aside, I think that I like to generally think that marketing should never be an increasing cost. We've got an amazing set of new technologies, amazing set of new opportunities. And I understand that media, there's a famous quote about media never being one media doesn't ever replace another. All media still exist. So, you know, radio didn't kill print, and TV hasn't killed radio, and the internet hasn't killed TV. But across that suite of products that we could utilize, media we can utilize to reach people, there has to have been greater efficiencies that allow us to do what we need to do more effectively. So I don't like the concept that marketing and media has to be an ever-increasing cost, or even ever-increasing proportion of a product's cost base. It shouldn't be. It should be. We should be creating efficiencies, and we should be creating, you know, greater delivery for less money. And often we are, but it's not always the case. I understand that, but we should be aiming to achieve that. Secondly, that we're seeing huge leap forward in terms of the technology that's available, the use of AI, the use of programmatic, and there's still a lot of pushback. And if there's one thing that I hope the difficulties of the last year and a half has helped us to achieve, that is that we've been able to relook at things in a way that will allow us to be more efficient and effective going forward. That we will use less people because our programmatic thinking and approach to reaching consumers has got better. Our understanding of the media we can use and the way they mix together has got better. Our optimization understanding and our optimization software have got significantly better. And I think some of those sort of legacy concerns around the use of you know, programmatic, the use of you know, we talked about influencers. I mean, you know, utilizing an influencer platform to manage influencers and actually measure them, you know, rather than the influencers being a Wild West part of the media mix where no one knows who's achieving what and which influencers are actually having which audiences, and if those audiences are even real. A decent influencer platform will allow you to measure that, to optimize it, and then to monetize it by amplification. And that suddenly takes your, you know, if you're, whatever you're spending today on influencers, if you put it through a proper platform that's run by a, you know, that's been developed, it will actually probably allow you to spend the same amount of money, but amplify your reach by 4 or 5 times. And that, you know, we've all got case studies on how to achieve that. So, you know, I like the idea that marketing can be, if not a smaller part of the cost base, a more efficient and effective part of that cost base. And that's not about reducing the FTEs or the, you know, the agency fee particularly. It's about being more efficient and effective.
Thank you for that. And we are almost out of time. So I want to take this opportunity to thank both you, Neil and Kali, for your valuable time. I know it's not an easy topic to start off early in the morning, but I'm sure it was something that the audience will take a lot of valuable inputs from. At the end of the day, we all know and recognize that marketing is truly the value generator. And some of the points that you guys made, I've kept a couple of notes, and I think I just want to summarize by saying the future is a hybrid future, as Kali was mentioning. It is not going to change whether it's pre or post pandemic. Hybrid is the way to go. Brand is a brand, and you need to continue to invest in that, because if you don't do that, the marketing is not going to yield the value that it should. And the new customer journey is continuously evolving, aided by marketing tech. And that is going to prove to be more and more efficient and should not increase a lot of costs for marketing, but add more benefit from that. So summarizing that as the 3 key takeaways for the audience. Once again, thank you so much for your time, and we appreciate you making the support for MMA. Thank you. Have a good day.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rahat and all the panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, and now we have 10 minutes break. In the meantime, you can visit partners booths in booth area and networking at the lounge area, and see you after 10 minutes.